In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a Y2K inspired chrome typography logo, as well as a seamless spinning rotation animation. So if you want to learn how to make this, just stick by. And the tools we'll be using in this video are Blender 3.0 and Adobe Illustrator. The first thing you want to do is, or the first thing I like to do is grab some inspiration. So I go to Pinterest.com and I type in Y2K graphic design or Y2K logo, and a whole bunch of different inspiration posts should pop up. So just go ahead and copy and paste whatever you feel like looks the best to your Adobe Illustrator artboard. I sort of always go for the classic Y2K logo, as you can see here, because I feel like this is the aesthetic that I'm going for. The next thing I want to do is look for a Y2K inspired font. I usually go on to font.com and I go to the modern medieval section, and there should be a lot of Y2K logos. The main thing with Y2K fonts, is that they need to be blocky and sort of slanted in a way. So you see me looking through here for something like that, and I did end up finding something like that, like the Airstrike font. That's very Y2K in my opinion. And the Paladines font, there's a whole bunch of these here, so just pick a few and see which one you like best. I did try a few different ones, and then I go ahead and go back to Adobe Illustrator. I click the type tool and I look for the font that I'm going to use today, which is this font right here. And I did type in Easter Sunday since Easter is coming up. And I feel like it'd be a stark contrast between the usual Easter pastel bunny aesthetic. Why not make it Y2K? And for this Y2K logo, I do notice that a lot of the Y2K logos have their text very close together, as you can see here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm changing the leading on this in the properties panel to make it very close. Is further customize my font. So you could leave it just like this, but I want to make it even more Y2K. So what I'm going to do is right click my mouse and create an outline, and that'll make each letter individual, but it's still grouped. So in order to ungroup it and actually make each letter individually editable, you have to click Control G to group and Control Shift G to ungroup. So I did that because I wanted to separate Easter and Sunday. So I ungrouped Easter Sunday, and then I grouped Sunday, and I grouped Easter, if that makes any sense. And I noticed that a lot of these Y2K fonts, they have a lot of slanting in them, and they're also interconnected in a way. So that's what I'm doing here. I move the Sunday to the side a little bit, and I'm interconnecting the R and the Y so it could look more cohesive. Grabbing the shape tool, specifically the rectangle, and then I put it next to the R and I kind of fix it up a little bit. And then I go to the properties panel and I click that little button, or the Pathfinder button, and it'll interconnect the R and the rectangle. And I did the same thing with the R, the rectangle, and the Y. So the next thing I'm going to do is take a look at my inspiration, and I noticed that a lot of Y2K logos have some type of shape added to them, whether that's like a heart or a star or like a sphere of some sort. So that's what I'm doing here. I went with the little twinkle star. So what I did is grab the circular shaper tool, and then I went to the FX panel, and then I went to distort transform, and from there I went to pucker and bloat, and it created this star shape. And currently I was just playing around with it to see how I wanted it, but I ended up actually wanting it to come directly from the E in Easter. So that's what I did. I actually went to Object Expand Appearance, and then I went to the eraser tool and erased the parts of the star that I didn't want to show in my E. As you can see here, before I even expanded the appearance, it was going crazy. So you definitely have to go to Object Expand Appearance. And then I went to the Properties panel and I went to the Pathfinder again and I merged them together. So just like I did with the R and the Y earlier. And that gave me this star E effect that is going on in this tutorial. Okay, so the last and final thing that I noticed for these Y2K logos is that they usually have some type of background that contrasts the text. So, or like background shape. So for this tutorial, I used a circular shape. So I grabbed the shape tool and I made an oval and I copy and pasted that oval. And I kind of just adjusted it to where it looked like, a thin hollow oval line thingy majingy. I don't even know what they're called. But yeah, so I made one of them white just so you guys could see it better. And then I merged those together within the properties panel in the Pathfinder, just like I did with the E and the Y earlier. And that created this shape right here, which I then later kind of like rotated a little to give me more of a slanted vibe, which is very much giving Y2K. Okay, so the final step is to export this file to get ready to edit in Blender. So you just have to go to File, Export, Export As, and just make sure that it's an SVG because that is the only way that it will work once you import it into Blender. Okay, so now that we're back on Blender, in order to import it, you just got to go to File, Import, Import SVG. And then once it's in here, just highlight everything and press S on your keyboard in order to scale it up, and RX90 on your keyboard in order to rotate its axis 90 degrees. And what I'm doing here is just, as you can see, everything's very much an individual object. So I want to first copy and paste this so that I have an extra SVG just in case I mess up anything, and I'll just hide it in the outliner panel. And then I want to shift on my keyboard so that I can grab all these objects together. So for the Easter, I just made it one object by pressing Control J or right clicking on your mouse and pressing join. And I did the same thing for the stars, which I'll end up not using anyway, but yeah. So the next thing we want to do is add an extrusion to the object. And I also decided that I wanted an outline for my logo, so that's what we're going to do next. We're actually going to go to the Object Data Properties panel and then go all the way down to Geometry and add the extrusion of your liking. I wanted it thinner than this. And then I press Control C, Control V to copy and paste this object. And I removed the fill and added a depth in order to make it thick enough to look like an outline within my logo. And that's what it looks like so far. If these little things, vertices, go out of place within your outline, don't worry, I'll show you how to fix that later on in the video. And I always just make sure my resolution is up within the bevel and my active spline is up to 64, and that usually makes everything look better. And we're also going to add an extrusion to every other object, so it's basically the same process. And if you want to add an outline, just do the same thing, but I didn't, so I unhid my circular object and the little stars that I had earlier, and I added an extrusion to them. And I also want to add plain mesh just as a background starter, and so you guys could see everything better. And now that I've extruded everything to my liking, I'm ready to edit it even further in sculpt mode. So in order to do that, I first have to convert the object into a mesh by right-clicking my mouse and then going to the modifier properties panel and remeshing it. For this, I'm using voxel, and 0.001 worked for me, and then I pressed apply. And this is a step you're going to have to do with every single object if you want to sculpt it within sculpt mode. So go ahead and just do that to all the objects you want to sculpt. So for me, it's the circular background object and then the little stars. After that's done, you can now switch over from object mode to sculpt mode in the top left corner, and make sure you select the object that you want to sculpt. And within this mode, I'll be going back and forth from the inflate tool and the smooth tool. You can adjust the strength and the radius at the very top left corner, and you can just go over this to your liking. The smooth tool just smooths out the edges and makes everything look better, and then the inflate tool kind of gives you that inflated, ballooned metallic effect, which I really like and what I'm going for this logo. but feel free to try any of the other tools and see if you like them better for your logo. And we're just gonna go ahead and do that for every single object. So just make sure you go back to object mode, select the object you want to sculpt, and go back to sculpt mode. Now that you've sculpted everything, you're ready to add the material and make everything pretty and Y2K-ish and play around with materials and backgrounds. So first you want to slide in between these two tabs to open a new tab, and you're going to go ahead and change this to a shade editor tab. This is where you're going to be able to change the environment texture and also the material. And I'm going to just very quickly remove this existing material that comes with the object and just add a random one so you can see what I'm looking for. But in the future, I'm going to really put my designer hat on and see what I want to do with this. Sure you turn on your ambient occlusion and your screen space reflections, and that would really improve the quality of your render if you're rendering within the Eevee renders engine. And then I'm going to go to the render preview tab, and as you can see, it's grayed out, so I have to add an environment by switching over from object to world and going to add environment, add texture, environment texture. And HDRIs are available online for free. I usually go to polyhaven.com to get mine, and this will drastically change the look of your materials. And of course, I'm gonna now play around with the effect. And if your material is grainy like this, when you add like a metallic material, just go ahead and right click your mouse and press auto smooth or shade smooth, and that should fix that. And I was really going for like a chrome typography logo here, so I changed mostly everything to metallic color by pressing the metallic to 1 and then changing the roughness to 0. Okay, so after figuring out what colors I wanted to use, I'm not going to adjust these vertices that went out of place. So I just click my outline and I go to edit mode and I click the vertices out of place and I just move it around until it's giving what it's supposed to give. You feel me? So that is what I'm doing here. so to further fix these other vertices that are out of place, I'm going to go ahead and convert that outline to a mesh and then just highlight the vertices and delete them. And that should fix my problem. This process is very much depending on the font that you use. Like your font might not even have vertices out of place when you do the outline. You know what I mean? So customize this to what you and your logo needs. The next thing I want to do is add a kind of grass background because I felt like it really went with Easter. And honestly, this logo was giving me Giants, New York Giants. So I was like, the grass would be perfect. So the first thing I have to do is I go to the particle system and I add a new one and I switch it from emitter to hair. And then in the numbers, I add 3500. The hair length, I make it shorter to like 0.4. And then I'm going to add a material before I do anything else by pressing Shift A and searching up color ramp and connecting it to my base color. And then looking for a noise texture and connecting that to my color ramp. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to interpolated and click on children, and that should add a lot more hair. And you're going to change the display amount to about 70 or really whatever your computer can handle. And then we're going to scroll back up and click on advanced. And in this setting, this would bring up the physics tab within this panel. And within the physics tab, we can go ahead and go to Brownian and click and input 0.004, or just depending on the type of grass you're going for. I wanted mine to be very like wild and fuzzy, so yeah. If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that I know nothing. And here I'm also adjusting the hair shape because I feel like usually blades of grass are like thinner at the tip and then thicker at the stump. So you just scroll down to hair shape and adjust the diameter, radius, and the tip. And now I'm just adjusting the camera. So you just gotta click the little camera icon and then press N on your keyboard and then camera to view so you can adjust it with your mouse. And for this, I'm going with a 1080 by 1080 aspect ratio. And if you click the camera and go back to the transform section, you can just adjust it from there as well. And I really had a hard time figuring these little stars out, so I just ended up deleting them. I'm like, listen, if it's not needed, it's not needed. So, and this is just me adjusting like how I want it to look on camera for my final render. And I do like to render in cycles, so I switched over to the cycles render engine. And if you have a GPU, just switch to that. And you may have to adjust the amount of grass that you have here. So, like, the number of blades I had was like 2000 or something. You might have to go down a bit because it just, the cycles render engine changes kind of everything. But if you like how it looks, then it's fine. And I'm just going to add a light by going to add light, and I start off with a spotlight and then I add an area light just to make everything more dynamic in terms of lighting, because lighting really changes a lot of things. So this really is like a full length detailed tutorial, because usually I would just skip all this and show you guys how to make the object. So if you're enjoying this full process of me trying to figure things out on camera and adding lights and cameras and all that stuff, let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy my content so I can keep making more. And you can also change the color of the light. I went with white. I tried a few different things, but white works best for this. And then I decided that I wanted to add some flowers in the background just to make everything even more complicated. I actually have a plugin called Blender Kit, which adds objects and materials straight into your viewport. So go ahead and download that if you want to, or it's free, or also you can just look for a flower object online and just import it into your viewport. But I just downloaded this flower and then I positioned it correctly and copied and pasted it everywhere I wanted. So Control V, Control C, and S on the keyboard to size it, make it smaller or bigger. So now I'm ready to render out the image. So I just go to render image and let that process. And if you want to save that, you can just go to image, save as, and it'll save directly to your computer. So in this next part, I will be teaching you how to create a seamless rotation animation with the object that you just created. So first order of business, go back to Eevee if you were in cycles. You can render animations in cycles, but it will take 3 years, a day, and maybe 100 years plus that. So I rather just render my animations in Eevee because it's a lot faster. So the first thing I want to do is convert my objects to meshes if I did not already do so. So the objects that I've fixed up in sculpt mode, those are already converted to meshes, like the main letters and stuff. So the outline may not be converted to a mesh depending on your process. So if it wasn't, just convert all those objects to meshes. The next thing you want to do is click all these objects and join them together by right-clicking your mouse and pressing join or Control J. That way, all these objects are really just one object now. And just for future reference, once you do that, you will not be able to edit the objects individually anymore. So just make sure everything is how you want it to look, because that is now one object and you will not be able to adjust the colors in that object. And what we also want to do is select the object and make sure that the origin is placed to the geometry, which places the origin to the center of the object. And that is very important for when you're doing rotation animations, because if you don't do that, it's going to look all lopsided and stuff. It's going off the origin of the object. So if the origin is on the side, it's going to be rotating to the side or whatever. So yeah. So the next thing we want to do is, we were originally in layout, so we're going to switch to the animation tab. And this is where we're going to create our animation. And the next thing we want to do is press N on our keyboard and make sure that that slider is at 1. And then we're going to press I at the rotation section. And then we're going to slide the slider to 100. And we're going to change the Z to 360, aka it's going around once. And then we're going to press I in order to make that a keyframe. So it's at 100 because that's how fast I want the animation to go. If you want the animation to go slower, you can move it to 200, 300. The possibilities are endless. So as you can see, now we have to adjust the frame range to 100 in our tab here on the right. And when you play it, you'll be able to notice something. You'll notice that the rotation animation is going at different speeds. So it'll start off slow, then go fast in the middle, then end slow. So in order to fix that, we press our keyframe, the very first one, then we press key and press linear. And that would make the animation or the rotation the same speed throughout. And the last problem we have to fix is that it's not seamless. So if you want it to rotate forever, all you have to do is go to the second frame, and that number at the Z says 3.64. That means it's moving 3.64 degrees every frame. So I slide all the way down to 100 and I subtract 360 minus 3.64. And that's going to give me 356.64. And I'm going to add that to the Z, and I'm going to create that new keyframe. And I'm also going to move that keyframe from 100 to 99 and change that in that right panel as well. And now that is seamless. Now, when you play that animation, it will never stop. It will keep on going like it has a 9 to 5. Okay. That thing is going to go on forever. And now you have created your seamless rotation animation. And now all you have to do is output this animation, which is going to be the next part of this video. So next thing I want to do is I'm going to go back to layout, and I'm going to go to the output properties tab. And you scroll all the way down, and where it says output, you're going to click that little file, and you're just going to click a file where you want this video to go. And then where it says file format, you're going to go ahead and change that to FFmpeg video. And then you're going to scroll down, and where it says encoding, you change that to MP4. And within the video section, output quality, you change that to perpetually lossless. And now you are ready to output your video. And the only thing left to do is just make sure that your animation is good on all fronts. As you can see, it was cutting into the background a little bit, so I just moved it up a bit. And I adjusted it a little. So now it's ready. I go to render animation. And this is going to render frame by frame. So frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it'll render frame by frame. And when it's done, it'll automatically save to your folder that you selected earlier. And that concludes this tutorial where you learned how to make a Chrome typography Y2K logo and a seamless rotation animation. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I put a lot more effort into this video. I hope you guys noticed, and make sure if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'm going to make sure I reply to them in a timely manner, because I know how people go while making tutorials. They just want to finish. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching the video.